Israel's Beit National Park is the site of a small Jewish town in the Lower Galilee, dating from the Second Temple period. After the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 CE, the Sanhedrin, the Jewish authoritative body, moved from Jerusalem, wandering around the Galilee region, eventually settling in Beit She'arim. Beit She'arim became the center of Jewish learning in the land up through the early part of the 4th century. It also became the favored burial place. Jerusalem was close to the Jewish people, so this site, favored by the rabbinic leaders of the time, drew the people for both learning and as the ultimate resting place. I'm Brenda Cathcart, and this is Shadows in the Land of Israel. The caves, dating back to the Second Temple period, reflect the changing Jewish habits and customs. As the centuries passed, the uniquely Jewish embellishments became mixed with Roman and Hellenistic symbols, with the greatest mix of symbols in the caves of the rabbis. Given the history and practice of the Jewish people to separate themselves from the Gentile population, it raises an interesting question. Does this practice represent the ever-present danger of assimilating into the broader culture, or does it show the ability to glean nuggets from other cultures without losing one's own identity? This is an interesting question to ponder. What intrigued me most about the tombs in Beit She'arim was that each cave held places for many bodies to be interred. The simplest burial cave had shelves cut out of the wall, with recessed places to place the body. Bodies could be placed side by side with only a small raised section between each body. Most caves had small rectangular doors sealed by one or more stone doors pivoting on hinges. The larger caves had larger openings, but again the openings were shaped into a traditional door shape with larger hinged stone doors. The stone doors were embellished with decorations and symbols, sometimes including information about who was interred in the cave. One cave was designated as that of Itzhak Zara, son of Shimon. Most caves had several different chambers of various sizes. Some chambers held burial shelves, others held large stone coffins intricately carved and inscribed with the name of the person interred within. One cave with 3 large chambers was designated as the cave of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, one of the leading rabbis of the time. The stone coffins were a relatively new custom picked up from the Romans. The bodies would have been anointed with burial spices, wrapped in linen cloth, and placed either on the burial shelf or in the stone coffin. The bodies placed on the burial shelf would decay quickly, and when the flesh had fully decayed, leaving only the bones would be placed in a stone ossuary in another part of the tomb. The shelf would then be available for another body. A cave used for multi-generations of the same family would contain many such ossuaries. Why did I bother to relate all this? For the simple reason to illustrate the burial practices that would have been in place at the time of Yeshua's death, burial, and resurrection. We read that Yeshua was laid in the tomb of a man named Joseph of Arimathea. Luke 23:50-54. Now behold, there was a man named Joseph, a council member, a good and just man. He had not consented to their decision indeed. He was from Arimathea, a city of the Jews, who himself was also waiting for the kingdom of God. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then he took it down, wrapped it in linen, and laid it in a tomb that was hewn out of the rock, where no one had ever lain before. That day was the preparation, and the Sabbath drew near. There are several pertinent facts in this short passage. First, Joseph was not from Jerusalem. Scholars differ on where they believe Arimathea was located, placing it as far away as Dan in the north to within 10 miles of Jerusalem. But the point is that even though Joseph was not from Jerusalem, He wanted to be buried near Jerusalem. The sages believed that after the patriarchs, the resurrection of the dead would begin at Jerusalem. To this day, burial plots near Jerusalem are coveted and expensive to acquire. A cemetery on the Mount of Olives just east of Jerusalem is a popular site even today. Instead of burial caves, the graves are dug in the ground very much as you would see in any typical Western cemetery. So Joseph of Arimathea had purchased a rocky area and had a tomb hewn from the rocky face. We tend to think that the tomb would be large enough for just one body, but the tomb may have been fairly large. If Joseph had a family, he would want it large enough to provide burial space for the whole family. It might even have had several chambers, or at least room for the construction of several chambers. It probably would have had a fairly small doorway, like those found at Beit, instead of the huge cave-like opening usually thought of when picturing Yeshua's tomb. Finally, this tomb had never been used. No dead body had ever been placed on the burial shelf which Yeshua's body occupied for 3 days. No ossuaries containing the bones from previous occupants. This is an important point. The ground where he lay, the chamber where he was interred, had never been unclean because of the presence of a dead body. No body except Yeshua's had ever been placed in that burial cave. Also, it was so new that apparently the stone door that would seal the cave and allow it to be opened for further use had not yet been prepared. Joseph had to roll a large stone in front of the opening. Instead of having an ornate door intricately carved and attached with hinges, a simple stone was rolled across the opening. This stone may have been put there near the opening in preparation to be carved into the stone door which would have had hinges for opening. But instead this stone was not yet hewn and had no ornamentation. Stone that had any connection with God was to be unhewn stone. From the stone used to build an altar to the stone that Daniel describes as crushing the kingdoms of the earth. Daniel 2:32-34. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Even in death, Yeshua had a special tomb prepared for the 3 days of his death. The tomb was new. No body but Yeshua's was put into it. I wonder if Joseph of Arimathea ever did use that tomb for himself or his family. Just as Yeshua's burial tomb belonged to a man named Joseph, Yeshua's earthly father was named Joseph, and at the first Passover and Feast of Unleavened Bread during the Exodus, the children of Israel took Joseph, son of Jacob's, bones with them when they left Egypt. This left Joseph's tomb in Egypt empty. When Yeshua rose from the dead, he left the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea empty. I'm Brenda Cathcart, and this is Shadows in the Land of Israel.